I know a lot's been said about My Friend Dahmer, and you've talked a lot about it. When we met, you mentioned that it was actually difficult to find a publisher, and I would think that that's just gold you're sitting on, just waiting to cash in. So I was really surprised to hear, that it was so difficult. Can you talk about the difficulties you had and how you were able to get Abrams convinced?
Well, yeah, I mean, when I started it, I mean, I think I did my first Dahmer stories like in the mid 90s. And, I was still doing the comic strip. I mean, I was up to my eyeballs in the comic strip at that point, which was kind of this crazy humor strip with this wild expressionist drawing style, post-punk drawing style. And so the early stories were like just whacked. I mean, it was this, very serious topic, but here was this drawing style that was, this goofy drawing style. It was like, I could understand why people were repulsed by it. I got one story published in 00, which was Fantagraphics' anthology title, if you remember that. And it was very well received, but they weren't interested in, I said, I got more. I think I told Kim Thompson this. I got more. I think, I got enough here for a book. And he's like, nah, that's okay. Classic Kim Thompson. Nah. And then I did some more stories, and I tried to sell those, and no takers. I mean, nothing but rejects. And then I said, okay, so I'll try again. So I scrapped all the stories and wrote just a long narrative. It's like maybe 100 pages, which is all the material I had at the time, because I hadn't really done any research. It was just straight memoir, straight out of my memory. Couldn't sell that either. And this went on for probably, till like maybe 2008, 2009. I think I just finished punk rock, because I set the Dahmer stuff aside and just said, screw it, I'm going to do another book. And I sold that one right away, I mean, Dan snapped that one up right away. So, you have that big gap when you turn in a book before it comes out. And with SLG, it was like a year. I mean, it was a really long gap. So I just said, well, I'm just going to draw this damn thing. I'm just going to do it. Because I don't think people can really understand what I'm trying to tell them. They hear the words Jeffrey Dahmer, and the first thing they hear is grisly crimes and cannibalism and necrophilia and all that stuff. And that's not what the book's about at all. So I just wrote the book. I just did it. And that's what I sent out. And I decided I needed an agent, so I just sent it out to a bunch of agents. And one of them read it and really liked it. So he took me on, and he's the one who landed it at Abrams. And it was a really long, arduous quest to find a publisher. But it worked. I mean, it was a big hit. So I mean, it was worth the effort. But there was a while there, where I thought, I'll never sell this thing.
Is it because you had tried getting attention and weren't able to, that you decided to do the route of the agent?
Well, I'd given up on comics publishers, actually. And I thought, I noticed that there were a lot of traditional book publishers that were starting up graphic novel lines. And I knew that I would need an agent to approach them, because I didn't know who to go to. So that's why I went that route. I was just looking for, maybe it was grasping at straws, but I was just looking for, a way in, which is always the big problem.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of comics creators would think to look for an agent. Was
really?
that hard?
A lot of them have them now.
Well, now, yeah.
A lot of them are with my age, actually. So
yeah.
he's kind of turned into the graphic novel agent now.
So the industry's definitely changed.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, the comics business is constant change. And if you don't keep up with it, you get left behind. So,
Hmm. Yeah. So when you did punk rock and trailer parks with SLG, I think you were saying you had a second book that immediately SLG picked up. Was that right? Or were you talking about punk rock and
no,
trailer parks?
no, Punk
SLG
Rock and Trailer
immediately.
Parks was my last book with them. Yeah, I think I did
Okay,
three books with them, and that was the last one. And
gotcha.
the first graphic novel. I mean, big graphic, 150 pages, wasn't that big.
Hmm.
But yeah, that was the first one.
Did did you make much money with SLG?
No,
So were you still doing the syndicated work
yeah,
during that time? Yeah.
doing the strip. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did the strip right up until My Friend Dahmer.
Okay. Okay.
People kept giving, they kept. I kept trying to close it down, and there'd be like some entity that would come along and want me to keep doing it and pay me money, and it's like, oh, okay, it was one of those things. I was just too that Germanic pragmatism, kept getting in my way, rather than just cutting the cord. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll keep doing it, and it was a total waste of time. I mean, I felt like I was repeating myself. I wasn't, I was having a lot of trouble writing the strip. Once I started doing books, I found that I lost the ability to write a comic strip. It was really difficult. So it was hard work, and I didn't like the work that I was doing, and it was a mistake.
Mm.
I guess it allowed you to buy food and toilet paper at least while you were working on Dahmer.
Oh, well, okay, we're okay. My wife has a good job, so we're okay.
Nice. Yeah, actually, that's something that we talk about a lot. Is a lot of us artists are lucky enough to have a partner with a good job or with insurance or a pension.
Right. Marry well. That's one of the keys to making comics. Don't marry somebody else in comics. That's the biggest mistake you can make.
Do you have many friends in comics or newspaper strips who you've kind of with your career kind of followed with them or not with them?
Yeah, sure, yeah, both in comic strips and in graphic novels, absolutely.
And did you see some of them succeeding when you were not doing what you wanted, or when you had success with Dahmer and they
No,
couldn't
we
get
were all
that?
about this. We were all about the same time.
That's great. Yeah.
Do you have kids?
Yeah, I have two college-age kids, actually.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in my son's room right now.
Posters.
Yeah,
I had all those books. I had all those books at one time. Even the Amazing Fantasy. I had a copy of that.
Wow,
Yeah,
impressive.
bought it for $20.
I bet that was a fortune when you bought it.
It was, yeah. It was like more money than I had ever spent on a book. My dad would have killed me if he knew that.
Yeah.
So did Hollywood come calling pretty quick with Dahmer?
Yeah, before it was even published.
So tell me about that experience.
Well, there had been some, I'd published a little of it. I'd self-published like a floppy full of short stories, like back in, I don't know, 2003 or something. And that got an Eisner nomination. And I got some attention, got some media attention. So it was just like a little 24. I published it just as like a sampler, like an ash can almost. Because nobody could see this thing. It's like, okay, here's what I'm talking about. Read this. And that didn't do any good either. I still couldn't find a publisher. But there was enough there that I had some inquiries from I think maybe 3 film companies approached me at one time or another. And, it just never worked out. Because they usually don't. And it was finally when I published with Abrams, my filmmaker, stumbled across a copy of the review, a review copy, and he called me right away. So the book wasn't even on the stands yet when we he optioned the book, and 5 years later it was made. That's pretty much the story. I mean, I had really nothing to do with it.
So creatively, you weren't involved?
No. I mean, he promised he'd be true to the book, and he was. And I consulted on it. I mean, I was not shy with my opinion because that's my right since it's my book. And gave him a bunch of material and introduced him to people and showed him around and all that stuff. So, but I was not involved with the actual making of the film. No, I was working on another book. I mean, that's my business, comics, not film.
Yeah, you're on to the next project while that's going on. Yeah. I know if I were a kid, I would be saying, wow, you made a comic and it got made into a movie. You must be a millionaire, right?
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't really work that way. And I can't complain about the money that the film made. It made a lot of money. I made some good money, and it sold a shitload of books, which was my goal all along. I mean, that's really what you have to focus on. You're not going to make $10 million off a film, but you're going to sell a lot of books. And, that was always my intention. So if you accept that, you won't be disappointed.
The movie was your best advertising then.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Could you kind of chart your sales and when announcements about the movie were being made and when the movie was released and when the video was released?
The book was already a bestseller. So by the time the movie came out, I mean, that was, 5 years later. So the book was already a bestseller in 16 countries. So I really wasn't. But yeah, it did have, it did pull sales up for a while. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. When you make a book like that, is it difficult to feel like you're that guy and that's your book? Like, is it tough to go on to the next projects, or do people, are people now fans of you and they're following you, or do you feel like this was a phenomenon, that hit and now it's still hard to kind of remind people, hey, that was me and I've got this other stuff too?
Well, that was 2 books ago, so I'd say that probably not. I didn't have any trouble writing the next book or the book after that. It certainly was a phenomenon. And if people are expecting, more My Friend Dahmers from me, they're not going to get it because it's just such a unique story. But they seem to, I mean, I definitely have fans that have followed me to other books. They apparently just like the way I tell stories. So that's been very gratifying. And I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that just like My Friend Dahmer. That's the only one they like. So it's a mixed bag.
I would think, though, that would be a way for people to discover you. So it could
go
both ways. Yeah.
I mean, it's always going to be my best known book. I mean, I knew that when I made it. And it's not really typical of my work, the rest of my body of work. I mean, I've primarily been a humorist, so that's changed with Kent State, obviously. So it's not like the rest of my work, and if you're going to have a best known work, you kind of want it to be representative of your work. But it's better to have a best known work than to not have one. So I'm grateful that so many people like it, and hopefully they'll check out my other stuff. And my other books have sold well, so obviously somebody is. I mean, it sold a lot better after My Friend Dahmer than it did before My Friend Dahmer. So.
Yeah. Having a publisher that's a book publisher, how does that feel? Being, a comics guy at comics conventions and stuff, but you're kind of on the book side of things too. Are you doing different like book conventions and comic conventions?
I do some book conventions. Yeah.
So
I think that the business is moving that way, so it's not really. I mean, Marvel and DC are becoming like more irrelevant with each passing year, where Scholastic and Abrams and Pantheon and Simon and Schuster are, putting out all these books that are selling millions of copies. So, I mean, that's kind of an old way of looking at the business, and I don't think it's applicable anymore. So we're in flux here. So no, I don't feel like I'm. And my editor at Abrams, Charlie Kochman, is an old comics guy. He was with Mad Magazine. He was with DC. So he's really clued in. He knows everybody. So no, it hasn't been a problem. No.
And similarly, how you structure your books, you would have made them. You said that you basically finished the book before Dahmer. That is, you finished before you even sent it out. So I assume book publishers, they're just looking for comics like you'd be doing anyways. It's just this different outlet for the same material.
Well, I've only worked for Abrams since My Friend Dahmer, so they trust me. I don't really have to work too hard to pitch them a book. I mean, if I come up with a book I want to do, they're going to say okay. At least they have so far. So it's a good situation for me. I'm very happy with Abrams.
Yeah.
What kind of editorial do they help you or stay out of your way with?
They pretty much let me do my thing. I mean, there's not. Charlie's a very hands-off editor. When he does make a suggestion, in my experience, it makes the book better. So I'm very grateful to have that. And then you get, layer after layer of proofreading, which is nice. I was used to that coming from the newspaper business, not so much the weekly business, but coming from the daily business. You had a copy desk and things would go through the copy desk and they would look at everything. But in indie comics, it's like, I mean, if you don't spell check it yourself, you're shit out of luck. So it's nice to have that kind of proofreading, that kind of fact checking again. I find it really refreshing. I think probably maybe some comics creators who aren't used to that would be really kind of overwhelmed by that. But that's coming from newspapers. That's my natural tendency. So I'm pretty happy to have it.